Welcome to another episode of Spinal Life Takeaways. These are bite-sized segments jam-packed full of information delivered to you at home or in the workplace. So how about we dig in? Today we have Tania Goosen. She's our Senior Vocational Rehabilitation Counsellor here at Spinal Life Australia. And Tania's really passionate about helping people with their career options. She spends a lot of time down at the Spinal Injuries Unit with the Back to Work program and out in the community helping people with their career options and study. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Katie.
So Tania, what is possible? Can you have a fulfilling career after having a life-changing injury?
Absolutely. It's something that we really encourage people to start thinking about as early as possible in their journey after their injury. Work means lots of different things to different people, but it's so important in terms of having a really fulfilling life and just finding something that's meaningful to you in terms of having that sense of purpose, something to do during the day and a meaning, a reason to get out of bed.
Is that any career?
Yeah, for sure. We've had people go back to all sorts of different work roles. Something that we're really passionate about is not letting your idea of what your spinal cord injury might limit you from doing, to stop you thinking about work in a really creative way. You might have to do things a little bit differently. There might be some technology out there that could help you do some of the things that are a bit more physically demanding in your job. And if you've got some good support, there's also ways that you can think about that work role a bit differently. Maybe do more of the things that you're really good at and physically able to do, and less of the things that are a bit more challenging.
And that's any level of injury as well. Anyone with a life-changing injury has the opportunity of going back to work as well.
Absolutely. We've had people with really high-level complete injuries returning to work. And again, it's about something that you're motivated about and passionate about. There's lots of supports out there to help you, and it's more just about finding what's important to you.
So Tania, tell me, what if I wanted to go back to my old employer or my old job? What steps should I take to be able to sort of start the process?
Yeah, look, if you've got an employer that you've worked for previously, it's a really great way of reconnecting with them. Reaching out with something positive, whether it's maybe a milestone that you've achieved recently, or even just the fact that you feel like it's time to maybe start thinking about work. If you've got that relationship there already, it's probably one of the best ways we find of people getting back into the workplace. They know you, they're confident that you're a good worker. All of those things are huge ticks in terms of that job seeking process.
That's awesome. Actually, I was just thinking back to when I first went and looked for work after my injury. I went back to my employer, but it was a case of actually treating it like a mini interview. I got the chance to sort of, dress up and put myself through my paces. And it was a great opportunity to really showcase myself when I actually went, for our meeting. I felt really good about being able to get back into the workplace.
Yeah, wonderful. And it's a great reminder for your workplace as well. They may have heard about your injury or, sort of partner with you part way through that process. But it's a really good reminder for them that you're keen, that you're motivated, that you're still the same Katie. You've got all those skills, all those experiences, and you want to come back to work.
Yeah.
It's a great way of them getting back an employee that was really valuable before.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Hey, great job.
And I think the other thing, when I was trying to do that, I found that I had to change my routine in the morning and, I was getting dressed in clothes that I wasn't really super familiar with. Have you got any advice there?
Yeah, look, probably have a chat with maybe your occupational therapist. Particularly if there are more physical things that you need to do. You mentioned like getting dressed. If that involves maybe putting on different shoes, getting some advice on how you can do that. If the physical act of putting on those shoes is difficult for you, great to get some input from a professional. If it's more about what you're actually doing in your workday. So an example might be wearing steel cap boots at work. If you need to put steel caps on to walk around your workplace, maybe even have a chat with your physiotherapist about building in some of that task into your actual rehab. Get them to walk with you so that you're doing that in a really safe way and that you're confident that you can do it when you actually start work.
That's a great idea. So we're just breaking down some of the tasks that we're doing and getting a physio and OT to be able to help us through making sure that we set ourselves up for success.
Yeah,
some really great advice. So Tania, I found myself after a while needing to find a new employer, and it can be really overwhelming just casually sending off all these emails, and I didn't know whether I should say if I had a disability or not. And I found for myself, I just ended up printing off my resumes, going into the companies that I wanted to potentially be employed by. It gave me a chance to check out the place, but also introduce myself and sort of, soft sell myself to start with. And it was a really great way to create those relationships. Do you have any advice for starting with a new employer? What should people do? What should we be aware of?
Yeah, look, absolutely. If you've got the confidence to do that, getting yourself in front of an employer can be so positive because they can see all of the things that you can bring to the job.
Yep.
You've got great communication skills, you're presentable. It's a really lovely opportunity for them to see a bit about you as a person before they're judging who you are and what your disability is.
Yeah.
Not everybody has that confidence, and there are also roles that maybe are not overly conducive to that in-person introduction. Yeah. So I guess the question then sort of turns around to at what point do you let somebody know in terms of that recruitment process about your disability? Legally, you don't actually have to tell an employer. So unless your disability poses a safety risk to yourself at work or the people that are around you at work, or if it actually means that you can't do some of the very core requirements of that job because of your disability. Legally, no reason that you have to tell somebody. There probably will come a time where it's actually helpful to let them know.
Yeah.
And more if you're going to be requesting any adjustments to your job that you're going to need because of your disability, or if you're going to need anything changed. So, certainly if you're doing an in-person interview and they ring you to say, hey, can you come in at 11 o'clock on Wednesday? If you haven't already let them know, that might be a really good time to put in a really positive way what you need. So an example might be asking, whether the interview can be held in a room that's wheelchair accessible.
Of course.
So,
are there any other tips that you could think of?
Yeah, look, probably just keep in mind that it's really up to you how and when you let your employer know about your disability. It's completely your choice. I would probably encourage you to maybe think about rehearsing that discussion with your employer. Think about what they need to know and what you're comfortable to share with them.
Yeah, which brings me to also someone asking about whether or not you have how you had your disability and making sure that you can kind of get that down to your 25 words or less.
Yeah, absolutely. And even again, rehearsing that sort of answer, it can sometimes help to take the emotion out of it, especially if you're still quite new to your injury. Anticipate that the questions will come. We often suggest that people might have a couple of versions of that story. So there might be a version that's a very quick kind of brush off answer that just kind of tells the person, yes, it happened, move on.
Yep.
But then you might have a longer kind of, again, rehearsed kind of speech that you're kind of willing to share a little bit more about what's happened and I guess how you're managing your injury at the moment.
Amazing advice. So being a senior vocational rehabilitation counsellor at the Spinal Injuries Unit with that Back to Work program, you would come across a lot of people that are looking at just switching their career up completely, leaving what they've done in the past and moving towards something new. So what advice would you give them?
Look, I'd suggest just start maybe looking at what you enjoy around work, listing the sorts of jobs that you've done before and really starting to think about what did I enjoy or not enjoy about each of them. What are some of the skills that you've maybe got, and starting to again do a bit of a deep dive into not just the physical things, but all of the parts of that job that you can really sort of tease apart and think about how you can apply them in a slightly different way.
And what you got out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your values around work? Do you enjoy working outdoors? Do you want to really work in a job that makes a difference? Do you just want to earn lots of money?
And is there someone that you can take that information to help you sort of figure out where to from there?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, people can absolutely go through this on their own, but we really encourage people, particularly if you are living with a disability, to get some professional advice from a rehabilitation counsellor or somebody out in the community who's going to be well placed to give you that advice. That's
awesome. I found myself actually studying, which was a great opportunity for me. I learned a lot, and then the place that employed me knew how I was able to, change my skills from one area to the next. Is there some assistance with study programs and study schools?
Yeah, there's lots actually. So one of the great things about studying, whether it's at TAFE or university, is there's often lots of supports from the institution themselves. Whole teams of people whose job is there to make students with a disability feel more comfortable about studying, putting in place some of those physical supports that make it easier for you to really succeed and show what you can do.
It can be exhausting as well. I know sometimes, that level of commitment that's needed in the really early days may be a little bit too much and a bit scary. So I'm guessing, is there any other areas that may make you feel a little less committed, but with the ability to give things a go?
Yeah, look, voluntary work can be a great pathway as well, especially if you're really in those early days about just wondering what that idea that you've got about work might be like in real life. A voluntary work opportunity could be a great way of not only road testing those ideas for yourself, great way of giving back to the community, getting some real life experience, having something that you can put on your resume, plus having a great referee that if you do a good job, they're there to say that, they turned up, they really gave 100%. So lots of benefits from looking at some of those voluntary opportunities without maybe the pressure of paid work or commitment to study.
That's some really good tips there, as well as being able to move on to something new.
And just finding that meaning and purpose again, having something to get up for during the day, somewhere to go, putting in place all of those supports that are going to really help you manage your injury at work and getting to know yourself and how your body's tolerating this new area that you're getting into.
So once employed, what can people do when it comes time for equipment or, different changes that need to be made to help make sure that they can perform the task and set themselves up for success?
Yeah, so awesome news that you've found yourself a great new job. Probably my first suggestion would be try and get in early. If you know that your new job is starting in a couple of weeks, maybe ask if you can actually have a walkthrough, have a look at the new workplace and just see what sort of barriers you think might be there. We find that if you come at things with a really positive problem-solving attitude, rather than saying to the employer, you need to change X, Y, and Z to suit me, it's more about, okay, I've noticed that, for example, my wheelchair may not fit under the desk that's been allocated. That I know that there is some funding for things like a height adjustable desk. Or could we maybe change things up and, if there's already one there, could I sit at that workstation instead so that I can actually do my job?
So just trying to empower people to speak up, but more from a positive point of view, and start the conversation rather than the employer sitting back going, I don't know what to say, or perceiving you to not be able to do something. Getting in first and really having those conversations and showing up with solutions to make them not have to do all of the hard yards.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're the one that, really understands your disability the best. Your employer's probably still in that space where they're not quite sure how to even bring this stuff up. So I think when you come at it with a really positive approach, you're also showing them that how they can help you, which I think is great confidence for everybody in that conversation.
And are there areas that or people that we should be talking to about helping us with these types of equipment?
Yeah. So if you don't have any supports in place at the moment, some people are registered with a Disability Employment Service. So if you are, that might be a good place to start. If you're not, and you don't have to be, you could also connect with somebody like Job Access, which is a national support service that provides work-related equipment for people with a disability who need some assistance around barriers at work.
Okay. This is all amazing advice, but sometimes it can be a little overwhelming. So what is the next step? Where do I go? What do I do?
Look, I think for everybody, there's something that you can do to help yourself start on this journey. It can be a big job, but I think just breaking it down into little goals and little steps that anyone can do. Some examples might be digging out your old resume and updating it. You might start listing some of those things that you can do, or talking to your physio or OT about how you can maybe bring some of those things into your rehab program. Reconnecting with your employer, all of those things that we've discussed today can just be one really good change that you can make to get yourself a little bit closer to that dream job.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Tania. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, Katie.
If you are looking at starting your journey, why don't you head to spinal.com.au and check out our knowledge guide. Thanks again.
Cheers.